Hey everyone, and welcome to 121 in Flux. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we talk about movies on this show. And in this episode, we are going to be looking at Lost River, which is a film from 2014 that was actually written and directed by Ryan Gosling. He's not in the movie though, although it does sport kind of an impressive eclectic cast, which
It does, yeah.
I'd forgotten some of the names that were in this, because I wanted to watch this. I'd remembered, wanting to see it, but I'd forgotten, outside of Iain De Caestecker, Fitz from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I'd forgotten the rest of the cast. So when it started, and it was like Christina Hendricks, Saoirse Ronan, Matt
Yeah.
Smith,
Do you know what?
Ben Mendelsohn, Eva Mendes.
It's funny because when you suggested this film, it was your turn to pick the movie. You picked this one, and I was like, okay, sure, I'm not familiar with it, but whatever. And then it started, and it got to Matt Smith, and I was like, hang on, I know what this movie is. This had a different title at one point before it came out.
Did it?
It did. It was called How to Catch a Monster. I know that because I remember all the promotional material leading up to it when Matt Smith was cast, because it was while he was in Doctor Who, and he shaved his head, and I remember that distinctly, and I was like, oh, I'll have to check this film out. And obviously, by the time it came out and it had a different name, it slipped off my radar.
I never knew it had another name. It was always Lost River to me. But this is what it's actually. I'd wanted to see it anyway because the trailer looked interesting. I remember the trailer coming out for it. It looked visually interesting, and it was actually after Twin Peaks: The Return last year. Johnny Jules, if I remember the name right, and the Chromatics did some music for this, and they did music for Twin Peaks. And it was when I was listening to some Twin Peaks stuff, I was recommended some music from this, and I quite liked it. And I went, "Oh yeah, that movie." And now the music's quite good. I should go back and watch this.
It has a pretty damn good score.
So that's why it was picked. It was just on the to watch list, and we're going to talk about it. We'll start spoiler free as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we go into spoilers somewhere in the middle. But here we go. So what is Lost River? Lost River is a fictional town. It's kind of a shithole where a lot of the houses have been abandoned. There's only a few people left. Of course, the river itself is kind of, they flooded a couple of towns when they pulled down a dam to create a reservoir. So you get this really odd imagery of like light posts sticking out of water. It's very surreal. So that you get that imagery, but you've got these main characters. You've got Christina Hendricks plays Billy, this middle-aged woman. She's got a older son. It never actually specifies what his age is. I think he's meant to be like 19 or something like that. It's hard to tell.
He's clearly somewhat responsible enough just through context, but he can't be that old.
Yeah. And that's Fitz from S.H.I.E.L.D. who plays him. And then you have Saoirse Ronan, who's like the girl about the same age as him, who lives next door, sort of down the road. It's like there's one house left with people in it, and it's the one on this street, so that's the one she's in. And then Matt Smith plays the villain, who sort of presides over this sort of ghost town, who is a bit of a crazy man. More on that later. And then there's also a banker character played by Eva Mendes, who, because there's kind of like two ongoing plots in the movie. There's Christina Hendricks' plot, where she's the struggling mother who can't pay her bills, and she's sort of looking to do this new line of work that's recommended to her by this banker, played by Ben Mendelsohn. But it has these nefarious overtones. What is it? What is she going to be subjecting herself to for a paycheck? And then you've got Bones, which is Ian's character. He also wants to sort things out. He's trying to fix his car so he can leave, and he is trying to make some money by going around all the derelict houses in the larger area and basically looking for copper pipes that he can sell off because the copper's quite good. And that's something that Billy, Matt Smith's character, has a bit of a problem with. He sees that as his domain. He's even built a chariot on the back of his car. It's basically just like a crappy old comfy chair that he's just taped on top of the up at the top of the car. It's almost Mr. Bean, actually, in a bizarre way. But he's got his helper dude Face, who drives him around, his henchman essentially. But it's kind of this thing where so many people have left. He's just this weird like villain who is allowed to run wild because there's no one there to stop him, and it means that he's dangerous to the few people who are left. And that's kind of the premise of the movie. Before we get into spoilers, there's also Bones has a little brother. They've got like a younger, like 3-4-year-old kid there as well, just to sort of make matters a bit more complex. But that is the premise of the film. So I'll ask the question that I always do. Connor, did you enjoy Lost River?
Not as much as I wanted to. I feel like it's a bit overstuffed.
That's an interesting answer.
Because I like a lot of what it's doing, but it didn't quite click for me.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of a similar boat. I liked it quite a bit, but it's never as great as I feel like it could be. Is maybe how I'd phrase it more so.
It's doing a lot of the right things. I feel like the two plots kind of hurts it a little because it doesn't necessarily come together in a real satisfying way for me.
No, and I think it suffers because one plot I think is much more interesting and beautiful than the other plot. I think Bones and Rat, who's Saoirse Ronan's character, she's called Rat because she has a pet rat. Clearly not her given name, but that's what she goes by.
The rat's called Nick.
The rat's called Nick. That's right. Their story. I mean, it's more of a Bones story where she comes into it a little bit down the line, but I think his stuff is a lot more interesting. If only because the visuals of him going around the derelict buildings, him running away at various points from Billy. That stuff is all really visually interesting, and he tends to get the sweeter moments with Rat, where they have touching little moments, and that gives us where the really nice music comes in. It does all these things, and it's a little bit more interesting. Whereas I think Christina Hendricks' Billy character, I mean, it's not necessarily bad in and of itself. It's just it feels more typical that she's being exploited because she's down on her luck.
This is the thing. If you take the Bones plot out, and this is just Billy and Dave, that stuff.
Yeah,
I like all of that stuff. It doesn't seem to come together with the other half, and I like it, but not as much as I like the other stuff.
Yeah. There's very little things I can actually point to and say I don't like that. I like just about everything that's happening.
It just doesn't come together as a whole.
It's very pretty. Music's very good, as I said. Obviously, with this very interesting cast. Fitz with an American accent was a little
weird.
bit and it's funny because Matt Smith's English, Saoirse Ronan's Irish, and I don't even blink an eye with them. Like, they're doing American accents, and I'm like, that's fine. But for some reason, Fitz doing an American accent was like, oh, this is weird. What's going on?
It was weird, yeah.
The first time you hear him speak, he's muffled because he's playing with his little brother, and he's muffling his voice with a pillow. And I thought he was just using his accent. I thought, this is funny. Does Hendricks get a Scottish accent in this? And it was just because it was muffled with a pillow. And I don't know if it's necessarily that he was doing a bad accent. It's just that when you're muffling your voice with a pillow, you either don't really hear the accent, so you just hear what you think you're hearing, or you just can't put on an accent in that context. I don't know.
I do think his accent's not as strong as the others, because you mentioned Matt Smith and Saoirse Ronan, and you don't even think about it.
That said, what I think works for the movie though is he doesn't actually speak that much.
He doesn't. Yeah.
There's a lot of silence. There's a lot of looks. There's a lot of that stuff.
Do you know what I think that the big takeaway from me for this movie is Gosling. He learned a lot from Refn, didn't he?
He did. Oh yeah. The neon, the music is very Refn. It's not as good as Refn, but it's definitely...
It's not, but you can tell he worked with Refn on those couple of movies, and he was like, that's what I want to do.
Yeah. And of course, there's a lot of parallels here to something like Detroit, and I think that's something... It's not actually set in Detroit, but it's kind of like a similar kind of site, a similar vision to Detroit. And I think the movie ultimately is about what happens to the people who are left behind. There's a great conversation at one point in the movie. There's like a cab driver who takes Billy to her new job, and it's always him that's taking her there. And they kind of get chatting about just kind of like he's an immigrant, and he came here, and he used to talk about how people, oh, you're going to America, like, oh, your money will basically be lying on the floor. You'll have a swimming pool, you have a big fancy house with 2 cars, and you'll have all this success, in the land of the free, blah blah blah. But he says, oh, but when I got here, it's like, there's people dreaming of getting a better life everywhere. Like, it's just not like, and I think for me, I was kind of thinking of Billy and Bones as almost seeking asylum within their own country. Like they've been left behind because and even the idea that this thing that happened to this town, this reservoir, was an intentional man-made thing. It was something they did to. Oh, this will make life better. You'll have this happy new town that'll thrive because of this new reservoir, and we see it present day, and it's derelict.
It's definitely not thriving.
No, it is the opposite of thriving. And of course, Billy's trying to keep her house from being demolished. She's trying to make sure she can make those payments because she's 3 months behind in the mortgage. It's a whole thing. And everyone keeps saying to her, "Why do you even want to stay?" Because we start the movie with like a neighbor, like one of the last neighbors is leaving, and he's talking to Bones. He's like, "Get out while you can. Like, just leave. Like, there's nothing here for you anymore." And he kind of seems to want to leave because he's trying to fix up his car to leave. But what's keeping him around? Why can't he just leave? And it's this idea that it's still their home, and I think it's definitely dealing with, okay, this is the people that the system have left behind, and the cause for a better world, or when I say better, I don't mean a better world. Usually when you say better world, you're thinking of, let's cure famine and let's make sure
world peace and all that.
World peace, yeah. We're not talking about that. This is people who said, we'll make the world better because we'll make it more commercially viable. But doing that has left these people in the rut and left them without anything. So, I think that's what the movie's really getting at. But it does a lot of this without really speaking a lot about it too much. It just kind of is. This is the after effects. We don't really see much of the cause. There's a little bit here or there, and we'll talk about the demon. There's not an actual demon. That's not a spoiler. It's a metaphor, but we'll talk about the demon and the spoilers. But yeah, and I think it got better as it went along as well. I think if I think of the last 20-30 minutes, I think that's maybe where it's at its strongest, and where I feel like it was coming together the most it had done. But I'd be really curious to see Gosling do more stuff, more directing.
I feel like as a first effort, this is not too shabby. It's
not. I thoroughly still enjoyed watching it, and it's the kind of flood film that I really like. Like, as much as I'm saying it doesn't quite click together too much, as much as it should. Like, it's exactly the sort of flawed little film where I'm like, no, I'm really into this because I appreciate what he's trying to do. I like a lot of the effect that he's creating.
Yeah.
Because I think even when it's not completely clicking together, it's always oozing the style and the tone.
Style and tone, yeah, consistent throughout.
And if it's doing that and I like that tone, I'm probably still into it, even when it's not quite nailing everything it's trying to do.
Yeah, that's what I say. It's just a little frustrating because, like I say, I still like it, but I wanted to love it. I was ready to love it, with what it was presenting me, and it just didn't get there.
Yeah. Do you know what's funny? Because I was thinking, okay, you got this cast, and that's just Gosling because he's got cred, he's got connections, he's Gosling. Even at this point, he's a superstar. But that's the thing. Like, a lot of the cast aren't people who were necessarily known yet, or they weren't that big. Like, it's not like being Fitz on S.H.I.E.L.D. is like a superstar.
You pretty much had Hendricks and Matt Smith because he was in Doctor Who at this point.
Honestly, I think the biggest star is Eva Mendes.
Yeah, maybe.
In terms of Hollywood, Hendricks was maybe a bit of a hotter ticket at the time because of Mad Men, but
yeah.
I think Matt Smith's kind of a weird example because often, especially coming off of a British TV show, I feel like he's not exactly got this pull in Hollywood.
With most British TV shows, I'd agree, but his Doctor Who was where it broke into America.
All right, okay.
It was his first season that broke into America and it took it by storm.
And of course, he is playing the least Doctor Who-like character there is.
He is, yes.
As you do. There's some creepy visuals as well. There's some facial mutilation at one point on one character that is...
it's pretty great.
It's great in how just simply grim it is. And it's very simple.
I really like that scene.
But yeah, so that is the film without spoilers. And yeah, so I guess we'll give the spoiler warning and we'll dive in and we'll talk. So yeah, so Bully, and if you're having trouble with me saying Bully and Billy back to back, I did too in the movie because for a good portion of the film I thought they were both called Billy. It wasn't until quite late on where I finally heard them pronounce it as Bully properly, and I was like, oh, it's Bully and Billy. I was confused because I thought the mother character and the villain both had the same name. And I thought maybe there was a dramatic point to that. That was making a point that they had the same name, but they weren't. Arguably, maybe they're still making a name they're so similar. Maybe that's still kind of a point. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't really see it in the character, though. Yeah. I feel more like probably should have chosen different names, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's meant to represent that they both are kind of holding Bones down in a way. Like, she's holding him to the town, and he's holding him down, as an antagonist.
Maybe. I feel like the problem is bullies, it works because it's descriptive, right?
Yes.
It's the same with rat. It's just really simple and to the point with why they're called that. Whereas Billy could have probably been called something else.
Yeah, she could have been called anything.
Yeah.
So, but hey, so Billy likes to cut things off with scissors, and we hear about this, and then he's so upset with Face for letting Bones go after Bones tries to steal back his copper, that he cuts off his lips, and we just see it from like behind the guy's head, but you know what he's doing because you've heard that he does this, and it's actually really uncomfortable and grim in that moment. But when you see Face walking about later with no lips, it is like
kind of horrible.
It's horrifying. It's actually disgusting. It's just
it
like,
is.
Jesus Christ, he's been mutilated. And of course, he also cuts the head off of a rat, the pet rat of Nick.
Obviously, yes.
Because he's playing all nice, like he's got a crush on Rat, and she's kind of playing along because she knows that he's out to get Bones. So she's kind of making sure that he can't see Bones. She's distracting him. She's agreed to like get a ride home from him, and he asked to pet a rat just at our front door. And then he just pulls out, and obviously there's a lot of like sexual metaphors here, where she's like, "Oh, am I the first person to touch your rat? Just me. I'm the first one." You know, it's very, it's you're almost hitting you over the head with the analogy. And then he just pulls out his scissors and starts to, you know, and it's not a neat cut. It's not like the scissors are strong enough to just cut through the head in one go. He's sort of chopping at it a little bit, you know.
It's uncomfortable to watch in the best possible way.
Yeah, but it has heart. Like I've never been, and it's funny. As soon as she pulled the rat out, I got concerned for the rat. I don't think I've ever been this concerned for a rat in my life. Not counting Splinter from Turtles, for obvious reasons.
What about the rat from Legends of Tomorrow?
I forgot he existed by the time he came back for that episode, though.
Yeah, but you got sad over him.
But I didn't fear for him, though. Beforehand, I wasn't worried about him.
That's fair, but they still made you sad for a rat, which is.
It made me sad for a rat, but it didn't make me fear for the rat's life beforehand, though.
Oh, okay, that's fair.
And obviously, I'm always worried about Splinter being kidnapped by Shredder's, like, you know, a soul-destroying thing for a young child. But yeah, so he is proper villainous, and I think what gets me is it's a little bit of Ref and it's a little bit of Terrence Malick, and then it just kind of like has the setting and it's kind of slow paced, although not slow that you feel it slow. Like this is a brisk 90 minutes to me. Like I feel like it went right in.
No, I agree. It's not a long movie at all, and I feel like that helps because it keeps moving.
Yeah. So Bones is still in his copper. We get our first introduction to Billy is him like he's got like a megaphone and he's just like riding around on his chariot in the car, just shouting that this is his copper, his land, and if he catches Bones, he's going to you know kill him or whatever.
Yeah.
And he spends time at the zoo. And obviously after this, we just kind of see him in bits and pieces as he's coming after Bones, and stalking him and whatnot. But that's pretty much it, because after this, you know, it's all about Bones and Rat's relationship, but they have a bit of a connection. They're kind of enjoying watching stuff together, and she sort of brings up some of the thematic ideas where she's like, because he says, "Oh, I found this underwater town today," because he finds, because the first time you see him and you see the light post sticking out of the water, it's like, "Oh, that's weird," and he mentions it, he's like, "Oh, it's the reservoir," and she's like, "Oh, like, you know, my grandma's got an old like film about it," and it's like this old film reel, and it's basically this film that was shown to the town that would live down there to convince them that this was a good idea.
Little propaganda piece.
Yeah, and it's like, "Oh, hey, but you'll be happy because home is what makes family, right? You know, family makes the home, and you'll be fine, and this will be great. This will be great for everyone. It will prosper." And she also like sets up this idea that so the idea that again this was like big business corporate that did this to them for a start, but then on top of that, like she's the one who gives up this idea. Oh, when this happened, there's a demon down there, and there's a curse in the town.
They put a spell to make sure no one will be happy.
Yeah, and until the demon's taken care of, no one can be happy. And that's a big thematic point, because after the horrible incident with the rat, and everything else, like Bones is like, he's like, look after my little brother, because they have this romantic night out, of course, before Billy does his thing with the rat. They have this romantic night out where we first hear the main theme, which is the music I'd heard before, which I really liked. It's really good stuff. But and they have this great montage almost of them just like dancing around like in the derelict like main city hub of where this is.
Yeah.
And it's later on, like after everyone's upset, that he's like, I'm going to go take care of the demon, and he's like, screw this, and he goes to the underwater town, and he's diving down. He's not even getting any breathing gear. He's just like diving down and see what he can do.
Just go down, see how long he can last down there.
Yeah, and he finds like a dinosaur, not a real dinosaur, but like from a zoo or museum. It was like a big model dinosaur.
Model,
yeah, and he cuts off the dinosaur's head, and so we get this imagery where he comes out because he's finally got his car fixed at this point in the film. He's finally fixed it because he gives his mum a ride to her work, and he's very concerned about all that. We'll talk about that side when we get to her stuff, but he comes back out of the water and his car's just burning. And because there was a vision earlier on, like there was this weird, like almost abstract, like foreshadowing of like something burning, and it was actually more so the Rat's house, because Faith sets it alight with her Gran still inside it, and Rat gets out, but we have these great images of the house burning. In fact, it burns to the end of the film because we actually go to the credits at the end with the house still burning.
Yeah, it's a beautiful ending.
Yeah,
visually.
There's a lot of beautiful shots in this. One of my favourites is after Rat takes the ride from Billy. Yeah. And Bones is left on his own at this store. He starts running like after them, and he's just running down this highway that's empty, and it's all the streetlights on either side. But he's perfectly in the center, just running, and the camera's just following him behind. It's just this beautiful, almost surreal shot of this highway empty.
It is, yeah. You can't say, if you've got any complaints about this movie, you can't say that it's not gorgeous, because it is consistently just great to look at.
Yeah, I think for me, like, because it captures the feeling that the characters are in, it captures this feeling of despair that they're in this life they're leading.
It's so melancholy.
Yeah,
is the word I'd use.
And because it conveys that so well, it really strikes the feeling in the viewer. I think I can forgive it for a lot of anything that it doesn't quite get to, anything it doesn't quite succeed in.
It makes it always at least enjoyable.
Yeah. So he actually, Billy's coming at him with the car. He's trying to run Bones over at this point, and Bones pulls out the dinosaur head, holds it above his head, and the symbolism, again, it's very on the nose here, but it's like Billy is the demon, and he uses the dinosaur head to kill the demon. He throws it at the windshield, and it makes him like swerve off and hit something, and he comes flying out the window himself. And that's him defeated. Right? He's slain the beast. He's slain the demon.
Yeah, and it was the idea that it had to be something from the old town.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all very symbolic. It's all kind of like, I think this is a movie you can't necessarily watch going in like, I want a gritty, realistic movie. It's all very symbolic and kind of almost dreamlike.
It's almost a fantasy movie.
Yeah, almost. Yeah.
It's like a fairy tale almost.
Yeah, but it's my kind of fairy tale. This is the kind of like melancholic sort of dreamlike state that I like in a movie.
I mean the original dark fairy tales, not the Disney version.
Well, I don't mean that. I just mean, like, the set and everything else, like fairy tales, like even if it's dark, I still think of.
Yeah, fair enough.
Like old timey stories and princesses and whatnot, even if it is dark as shit.
Yeah.
Whereas this is more of an urban, like modern setting, using the constructs of modern society to tell its story, as opposed to.
What should we call it? An urban fairy tale.
Yeah, you go with that. And so yeah, he comes back, and he doesn't know about the house burning. He comes back and he's like, "What, are you okay?" And he's like, his little brother's okay, and he's like hugging them and stuff. And of course, this is when the mum Billy comes back as well, and she sees this, and that's when they finally leave. We find the film with them going with the cab driver who's been around, because there's one shot of him in the middle of the film where he seems to help families out, because we see him with like this couple and their kids, and they look very thankful, and they're shaking his hand, and it's like he's helping them go somewhere, and not just as a cab driver. Like, it feels like it's more than that. It
does feel like more than that, and you have to assume part of this is his story about being an immigrant and looking for something better. He ended up just helping others get to the better.
Yeah, it's almost like it's not quite like like sneaking people out of the country. It's not actually illegal, but he's kind of doing that just in a domestic sense, where he seems to be helping people move to better places. And at the end of the film, like all of our surviving characters, Billy, Bones, Rat, and the little brother, they're all in the cab with him, and it's like they're finally going off to a better life. And it's kind of like this double-edged feeling of, on the one hand, it's like, okay, they finally overcome this, because part of what I was reading into the film over the course of it was that Billy also kind of represents Bones' unwilling, like that's like his almost like personal demon, because he keeps saying that he's going to leave, but he keeps not leaving, and that's the obstacle that he needs to overcome, because he keeps not committing to it. And but at the same time, there's a reason why they want to stay, because it is still their home. There's still positive reasons to stay. Yeah. So I saw at the ending as kind of this double-edged thing of like, it's happy that they're finally getting out and they're finally leaving this behind, but it was forced.
Yeah, they didn't make the choice, which I think is the key thing with, going back to the reservoir town, the original towns that were flooded. Yeah, you could argue they were forced because they were persuaded, but they ultimately, it was a choice still, right? They chose to leave.
Yeah, I mean, not individually, but presumably there was votes, or the government, local government decided.
As a town, as a society, they left willingly. Whereas here, it's like, no, you're just burnt out of your home. Like, you've got to just go.
Yeah,
you've got nothing left.
And there might even be something symbolic there with that town was forced out with water. This was forced out with fire. There's something, some dichotomy there you can maybe look into. And then obviously Billy's story, because obviously when she goes to the banker at the start, Dave, and he's very kind of unsympathetic. He's like, oh yeah, I've been to 1,000 towns like this where everything's going to shit. You can't pay your mortgage. And he says, you're very attractive, you could make money. And obviously, it sounds like prostitution, right? It does sound like that at first.
It does, yeah.
It sounds very on-the-nose prostitution. But it's a little bit weird on that, because she goes to the club, and it's more like there's two elements to it. There's the front stuff, where it's like a weird variety act, where the different girls who go up, they're not necessarily strippers. Like, some of them might be,
it's more burlesque.
Yeah, because Eva Mendes' character, her thing is that she gets killed on stage. She doesn't really die, obviously, it's all fake, but she screams and she's stabbed, and it's like this brutal murder. And later on, Billy's act is that she cuts off her own face.
But it's all sexy.
Yeah, it's weird. And
like I say, it's kind of like burlesque, but with a twist.
But Dave's kind of this leech, because he admits that when he goes to these towns, he kind of sets these up, because it's like, oh, they can all use this, and he basically makes money off whoever's left in these towns.
He's such a Mendelsohn plays Slimy so well.
Oh, he does. And throughout the film, he clearly, wants, Billy. He wants to have sex with her at the very least. I don't know if he wants any more than that necessarily, but he just wants that. And he gives her the ride home at one point, and it's kind of implied, because Bones, there's a couple of lines where he implies that, who's Dave? Like, who's this guy? As if she's had other, maybe been kind of not loose with men, but she's had maybe some bad boyfriends in the past. Like, she's made some bad choices when it comes to men, and he's concerned about it. And there's that great shot where Dave drops her off home, and Bones is just out there looking through the window.
It's guess this is Dave.
Yeah, and it's this great thing where you don't necessarily see him as this asshole who's overstepping his bounds. It feels like genuine concern. Like this is based on the past. It's not just
but the way she reacts when he first says it, it's very early on in the movie. It's like, who's Dave? She's like, it's just the guy from the bank. She's very defensive immediately. He does get a bit overprotective. Yeah,
I mean, we don't know the situation with the little brother, but the little brother is much younger than him. So I don't know if that means that there was someone who abandoned her relatively recently.
Yeah, maybe. Quite possibly. Yeah, I think it's maybe a bit of both, where he is maybe a bit overprotective and almost jealous. But in this case, he's kind of right to be, because we kind of see how slimy Dave is pretty quickly.
Oh yeah, so he's definitely not to be trusted. And
so it's you're kind of on his you're on Bones' side pretty quickly.
Yeah, obviously Dave represents he's this corporate asshole kind of taking advantage of who's left.
Temptation, it's it's the offer out. It's like, here, we'll help you.
Because even at the start of the film, she had another banker who got fired, and he talked her into a loan, and she didn't understand what the loan was, and she just he talked me into it, but she didn't understand it. Again, it was someone taking advantage, and it's happening again. And I guess that's kind of the positive light to her story, is that this time she eventually doesn't let it happen. She eventually says, no, you're not taking advantage. Because we get introduced to this thing underneath the main club called the Shells, where the ladies will go into this almost body cast, plastic case that locks. And it's kind of sort of that thick, clear plastic, so you can kind of see the person in there, but not necessarily the defined features.
Mm.
And the idea is that someone can pay to come in here while you're in this case, They basically just do whatever they want outside the case. So it could be to yell at you, it could be to masturbate, it could be to anything. And eventually, she's hesitant to do it, but it's going to make a lot more money more quickly.
Yeah.
So she ultimately gets down and down enough to agree, and she goes inside the shell, and it's actually Dave who comes in. He's the one who's paid to come in and do it. And you don't know what he's going to do, and he just starts dancing. And it's very demeaning. It's very like, I've got you where I want you. I can do anything I want. And he starts making sexual gestures up at the thing. And he has his own control. Because he runs this place. He pulls out a little remote. It's this little control to open the shell. And he keeps opening it. And she keeps quickly shutting it again with her button inside. And it's just this back and forth. And again, it's her being trapped, literally in this case, and forced into this thing. It's this corrupt boss who's trying to take advantage of her. The entire thing's been about taking advantage of her. And there's a neat touch because when Bones dropped her off, she left her purse, and maybe he almost intentionally wanted to see what this place was, and he brings it in, and he sees Dave, and he goes down and he sees the shells, kind of. He doesn't really get an understanding of what they are, but
it's hard to tell at a glance, isn't it?
But he talks to Kat, which is Eva Mendes' character. He's like, oh, she left her purse outside, and she's like, oh, I'll make sure she gets it. And there's a great thing when Billy comes out of the shell, she sees her purse on the window where Kat left it, and she knows that, oh, my son must have brought that in here. He must have seen some of what I'm doing in here.
She's a bit ashamed.
But of course, she's also been attacked. She's been sexually assaulted, or at least cornered for that to happen in the scene. And we knew she had a knife, and she stabs him in the ear because he's half deaf. He says that a lot in the film. Where you can only hear a little bit out of one ear, and she stabs him in that ear and makes a run for it. And that's when she comes back to the burning house at the end, and that's when
pretty satisfying. That stabbing. That
stabbing is pretty. He's such a sleazeball throughout the entire film. It is very satisfying. And it's and ultimately the film is both of our main characters standing up to their adversaries. In one case it's Billy with the cop or the car who actually violently tries to kill people, and then someone trying to exploit.
It's more psychological
sexual exploitation, and it's these people being preyed upon. And them finally standing up, and even though they don't really want to leave, they finally get a chance to leave, and it's like, okay, maybe we should, because again, going back to the whole, they're made immigrants in their own country.
Yeah,
idea.
It's kind of the American dream almost. Is there's somewhere you can do better, right?
Yeah,
you can always go up.
Yeah, and I think it's like. Yeah, I mean, them moving somewhere else in the country could lead to them having a much happier life. There's always the prospect of that.
Right, but that's at the end. It's no. You're free to go up and find something better. That's kind of very American to kind of, which again, a lot of the consumerism and the
but again, the entire film is kind of pointing out how much bullshit that dream actually is.
It is,
and
yeah.
how and it's like, yeah, you can make something, but. It's not easy. It's not something you can just arrive and do. Which is again what the cab driver was constantly talking about. Oh, that's what everyone was saying to me before I came here, and it's not like that at all. It's actually really hard. And you come here, and the first thing you noticed was that there was other people who looked like how he felt back where he came from, back where he was from, and yeah, it's this idea of I think ultimately it's a criticism of not taking care of people. You could argue that this sort of dips into. Just government actually looking after its population, and simple things like not letting the housing crisis go nuts, actually having healthcare, things like that, and so on.
Yeah, basically being a touch socialist, essentially.
Yeah, and the people that this leaves behind, and that's what it is. And it's I think it's great that it's set in a fictional city. It gives it this ethereal quality.
Yeah.
The idea it's a parable more than it is. Here's an actual great.
It never feels real at any point.
Yeah. Well, no, it does, but everything it's doing is real, but it feels like it's not our world.
I mean is all the messaging's real, but when you're watching it, I don't feel like I'm watching this take place. It doesn't feel like this really happened. Like that. It feels like no, it all feels like a story, to highlight the messaging. And that's not a critique. That comes back to me feeling like it's a fairy tale. It doesn't feel real. It feels like a tale.
I guess I just fundamentally don't get that line of thinking, just because I could say that about any story I've ever watched or read.
I mean, you could, but what I mean is, a lot of them, stories will feel grounded in a real world, whereas this, it it doesn't. It feels like it's intentionally.
Oh, sure, but what I'm
abstract.
saying is that doesn't necessarily make it feel any less like it happened to me, I guess is what I'm saying. I've never
Okay,
felt
fair
that
enough.
when I'm watching something. Like, I don't distinct between, oh, because this is not set in what I feel like is the real world, it's not happening. To me, no, this is happening, it's just happening in another... I don't want to say alternate reality, but like it's almost like, you know, there's some films and stories where it almost feels like they're in a pocket universe. You know, we've talked about this before in sci-fi, where they'll have like I think 3% was the one we talked about it last time, where it feels like there's not a rest of the world. It's just this one city for the purpose of the story, and it's like, okay, so this is in like a pocket universe almost. It kind of feels like that to me more than it does. It didn't happen, I guess.
Okay, fair enough. It's just the way it made me feel, but
But yeah, so there you go. That is Lost River. And it's funny because we said it didn't quite click, and I guess we should probably try and say why it didn't quite click, because we've not really said anything negative.
yeah, I think as much as thematically, Billy and Bones, their stuff at the end comes together with them, fighting their oppressors. Their
Even
enemies,
intercuts between them.
it does. I just feel like as a narrative, it doesn't come together. They cross over here or there, the start, the end, like the purse, there are touches where they meet, but for the most part, it feels like almost two separate movies, two just completely separate stories that happen to have the same style and tone.
Yeah, I can see that. I think for me, I could maybe use an extra like 10 minutes or something like that. I felt like when it was gearing up for the end, and it was like, I'm going to go like lift the curse and defeat the demon.
Yeah.
When it got to that point, I almost felt like I needed a little bit more build up to this. I think
that makes sense, because I think one of the first things I thought when I finished was that was overstuffed. There was too much going on with all those characters.
Another 10,
equally,
15
I guess
minutes.
you just say it's too short, right?
Yeah. I think another 10, 15 minutes to just let some of the setup breathe in the middle act, the first two acts, but I'm thinking the middle act more, because I feel like the introduction's fine, and then I just don't feel like we go through quite enough to the point where I feel like we're ready to have the big climax of him going to do something, or deal with what's going on. But again, it's all very vague. It's all just very like I can't quite pinpoint exactly what they should do beyond that. It's all very just kind of. It's just not quite coming together as much as it should. It's one of those
rare times where it's just a feeling, isn't it?
Yeah.
I can't quantify it necessarily. It's just not quite there.
But it does a lot of things very well, and I'd love to see Gosling do more directorial work.
Oh, definitely. If he can, have a few attempts at this and practice and hone his craft, I feel like he could be excellent. Yeah.
I would still highly recommend it, especially if you're into films of this type. I would highly recommend checking it out. I think there's enough there where I'm still very, very positive on it, and it's one of these things where I respect this way more for trying as much as it does and nailing so much of it, and just feeling it's a couple of things where I'm like, oh, like I respect this. I respect the artistry that went into this. And you can almost argue that it's maybe just too on the nose in places. Like it's just a little bit too, like he wants his metaphor and he wants his metaphor in the visual, so he makes it happen. And it's like, okay, that could maybe been a bit more subtle there. Maybe that could have like naturally built to that a little bit better, and things like that. But
stuff like the innuendo with when Bully's talking to.
There you go. Yeah, that's an example of it being a bit too just.
It's like, yeah, okay, we get it, and it goes on just to be a little bit too long with those things. To make its point. Yeah.
So yeah. I guess we'll rate the film. I guess we'll rate Lost River out of 10. What would you give it?
I'll still give it a 7. I'd love to give it more, but I just can't quite.
I'm actually gonna go higher than that. I'm gonna give it an 8. Because I think, again, for me, everything that I love about it lifts it up. Like as much as there's some problems, and I can't really go any higher than that. I can't say it's amazing, but I would still say, like, for me it was great, because something as simple as just keeping me wrapped up in your mood and your tone for your duration solves a lot for me. It's something that that crosses over for me into video games, into comic books. If you can keep me in your world, your atmosphere, and I feel soaked in that, I'll forgive a lot because you're really pulling me into a world where I can watch something that will technically be better in almost every other way, but if it's a dull, drab world where I just feel like there's no mood in the room,
Yeah.
it'll work less for me. You know, I'll find myself bored much quicker in that scenario, whereas here, I was always engaged.
No, that's fair. Which is why, you know, if like say that 8 is, you know, great.
Yeah.
I think 7 for me, it's good. It is really good. It doesn't click enough for me to say it's great, even though the mood and tone individually are absolutely great.
But hey, that is Lost River. So if you have seen it, let us know what you thought of it in the comments below. You can like and subscribe with that stuff. That does support us, but if you want to support us more than that, you can go to patreon.com/MailedFuzzTV. There's a bunch of bonuses over there that you can get for being a patron, including getting these episodes a week early at the $1 tier. There's also handy lists there for all the shows we do, including all the audio feeds. So even if you don't want to be a patron, you can still go over there. There's also some useful links and stuff to get there in a nice, neat package. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you very much for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching movies, guys, and we will see you next time.